DJLG.
Life's good.
Hey, it's Diane, Key, and LG, host of the Now What podcast. This is the show where we elevate our people by bringing diverse voices straight to you on our website, www.nowwhatradio.com. This is a follow-up to episode 63 with special guest Roxanne Martinez. And if you have not listened to episode 63 yet, make sure you do so. In today's episode, Roxanne shares her personal experience with America's healthcare programs, the government's systematic approach to oppress those who are most in need, the poor and the sick, and why representation matters for communities of color at all levels. Roxanne also shares a glimpse into the politics behind a 2021 runoff election victory as Fort Worth ISD Trustee District 9. Your story couldn't get any more inspiring. And, you did all the right things, right? You followed the steps. You followed what America considers you to, be set up for success, right? And achieve all of the benefits that, first middle class, Americans receive. Went to a corporate job, had great benefits. What was your feelings towards our government's programs, right? Social programs. And did that impact, you personally as you entered into the next phase of your life? And, how much of that would you have never learned or, known about? And people still don't know about?
Yeah, I can tell you, Diane, just the process of going through what I had to go through and losing my health insurance and fighting for my life and for the life of my child, I was disgusted by what I experienced when it comes to, one, just corporate America, and also the way that we help the less fortunate and the needy families in our nation. I can tell you when I pretty much had to sell off all of my possessions and just everything I had worked for. Like you said, I've been working. I've been doing all the right things that I was told I was supposed to do and working my way up the career ladder. And for an employer to just terminate me for a reason that was beyond my control. And then for the government to say, we can't help you because you own a car. So I was like, okay, so I sell my car. How do I get to my appointments? What am I there? And then they offer a bus pass and, they're like, we can give you free bus passes. I'm like, so I need to sell my car, my reliable car that's paid off, and accept your bus passes in order to qualify for financial assistance. It doesn't make sense. It did not make sense to me. I was completely just disgusted by the system. I just felt very disillusioned at that point of everything that I believed. I believed in the system that if I do this, I would get this, and that I would have these benefits protecting me. And that was not the case. I mean, before our current healthcare laws changed, I went for a period of about a year where I didn't qualify for any insurance at all. And, now I live with that. I have a pre-existing condition. And, I'll have to live with that. But that's when I really became involved in advocacy and said, something has to change. The things have to change. But at that same time, I'm going through cancer, a very aggressive cancer that I did not know if I was going to survive. But I ended up, I gave birth early. I had my child at 32 weeks. She was a preemie, 4 pounds. And I remember them telling me, I'm just thinking of all the costs. They told me she was going to be in the NICU for possibly 4 months after giving birth. And I remember the day that I gave birth, and the next day the nurses came and told me, my daughter's in NICU, but they said she pulled out her feeding tube and she passed all the tests and she's ready to go home. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, she doesn't meet any of the criteria to be in NICU. And so she's ready to go home. And I was like, wow. So there I am to take my child home. And me just being who I am was like, how am I going to support my child? How am I going to support my family? Because as you can imagine, I'm still the oldest of 5. And being the status that I had, I was a huge contributor to my family still, even at that time. I had 2 sisters that had, while I was away in college, they both became teenage moms. I was helping them raise their children. I have 2 nephews I was helping raise. And so at that time, I was like, I'm just thinking like hustle, like I got to help my family. I still got to make do. And I would say a couple weeks after I birthed my first child, I birthed my company, Rockstar Marketing. So during this whole time that I was going through this journey of cancer, I was thinking like, I got to look out for myself. Like I won't go back to what I just left and the experiences that I just left. And that led me to want to become an entrepreneur, work for myself, and really have more control over my own destiny. And my company was birthed out of that whole experience.
Wow. Absolutely. Well, Roxanne, wow, that's like I said, an amazing triumph for you, right? One of the things I just want to remind our listeners is that here in America, bankruptcy, over 66%, that's over 2/3 of bankruptcies are actually caused by medical bills, not from overspending, not from, living lavish on credit cards, it's from medical bills, right? And even Roxanne, you've kind of spoken about it. You had to go a period where you were actually without insurance because of your pre-existing condition. You know, I just want to open it up to you. I want to ask you, how do you feel about our current, medical system? And the LG, I don't know if this is the right place for it, but I just felt like this just flowed here. But I just want to understand, I want to get your insight because that's an experience with your job, with your health insurance, of course, dealing with medical bills. Could you share a little bit about just your own insight, your own personal feelings regarding our medical system and how it's probably letting people down?
Absolutely. Our healthcare system here in the U.S. is broken. It does not, it was not designed and it's not built to really help people out of the conditions that they find themselves in. For me, myself, like I said, I felt like I did everything right. I was saving, I was investing in my 401k, I was doing all the things that they tell you to do, and yet I lose my job and then I lose all of my assets. I actually had to file bankruptcy about a year after my treatment. And this was, again, after I had already sold all of my assets, went through all of my savings, cashed out my 401k, and was penalized for that. And, and it's just, our healthcare system is broken. Yeah.
So you say it's broken, and I definitely agree. Do you believe, you talked about your cancer journey, and that's very inspiring. And that was in 2010, I think, was the year you referenced there. And this was pre-Obamacare. Do you believe that the healthcare system post-Obamacare, it gets a lot of bad rap in the press, and, let's just hypothesize, if Obamacare was there in 2010, would things have been different from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for one, I would have still been eligible for insurance through that time that I was uncovered. I remember it being, very widely reported in the news, and no matter how you felt about it, one way or the other, I remember I was advocating for it because I knew what it meant for me and my family, that I needed that coverage, that my life depended on it. I mean, even though I came out triumphant after that battle, this type of cancer had lingering effects. I had long-term effects from the chemo. I had additional surgeries that I had to have in the years after. Even though I beat cancer, there was a lot of follow-up surgeries and appointments and medications. And I remember, when Obamacare was introduced, and I was able to then regain coverage and feel like at least I felt a little bit human again, in that someone actually cared enough to just not let me die.
Lots of inspiring stories up to this point as part of sharing your life journey here. And one of the things I want to go back to is you talked about that guilt when you originally left the Diamond Hill community and going off to college. And then you also talked about how the community helped you when you were experiencing probably one of the hardest experiences of your life, fighting cancer. And then fast forward now today, you are a school board trustee here in the Tarrant County region, and now you're helping the community.
Yeah, interesting that a lot of folks, as I learned on the campaign trail, are not aware what a school board trustee does. And so the school board trustees have a couple of main jobs or responsibilities. The only staff person that we oversee or manage is the superintendent. So we're responsible for hiring, firing, managing, kind of tracking the superintendent of the school district. We also help to set the district's goals and to make sure that we are on track on those goals. And so depending on the school district, they set different goals. For Fort Worth ISD, we have like 3 specific goals that we're working towards. And then the other thing is also setting the budget, setting the annual budget and allocating resources according to that budget, and then also policy. So a lot of people don't know what that means or what that entails. As a school board trustee, I am not involved in the day-to-day operations of like my local school down the street. I am involved in the high level setting policy that will create the best educational experience and opportunity for all students in the district. Those are essentially my roles.
Absolutely. That's a very, very important role you have there. So when you say that you're setting policy, right, I just have a question regarding this. Is that, in setting goals, is that academic goals for the district, as in this is what the students should meet? Could you tell us more about what those goals and policies might look like?
Yeah. So, for example, I came into the district where, there was already some goals that were set prior to me being on board. One of them is around 3rd grade literacy. Right now in Fort Worth ISD, we see just a huge opportunity gap amongst students of color and those economically disadvantaged students. Roughly only around 1/3 of the students in our district are reading on grade level by 3rd grade. So we have a goal around that. We also have goals around middle school math, and then also around college and career readiness. So like how many graduates are we putting out there into the workforce that are either ready to work, ready to go to college, or ready to go into the military or any other field that they choose after high school. So those are kind of the 3 main goals that our district has. But what the school board trustees do is that we get quarterly reports from staff. So staff advises on a lot of the decisions, and then the board reviews those decisions and decides whether to approve or disapprove. Right now, obviously, as we're getting ready to go back to school, we have some really important decisions to make around COVID protocols. We're getting ready to address all of that next week in a meeting. And that's a topic that is of high interest to me because my community has been so affected by COVID. And so setting that policy of what are going to be our COVID safety protocols. Right now, there's also some really heavy topics around equity in our schools. We've been seeing a lot of people come in and comment on critical race theory and racial equity. it's been, so I've only been on the board less than 2 months. I've had 2 board meetings, and wow, they've been really interesting. There's a lot of hot topics, right now in the forefront. And as a trustee, like I said, I have to stay focused on academic goals that are going to help students achieve. And so that's what I'm really focused on. But there are also policies that support those academic goals. And the current resolution and committees that we have around racial equity are helping to work towards those goals. And so those are kind of additional policies. When we talk about policies, it could be a lot of different things, but ultimately the policies should support your goals.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I love this type of stuff. Like I'm like actual nerd when we talk about politics, elections, things of that nature. So I'm very curious in the process. And what I find interesting is that your career has been marketing. In my mind, working on campaigns, marketing, running a campaign, it's almost kind of the same thing. It's almost like that's what you're doing in the campaign. You're marketing for the candidate, right? So I'm super interested in your process and how you ascended to being the trustee. What was that process? Start me from the beginning. What made you want to run, and then how did you start?
Key, I never intended to be where I am now. I never saw myself as a politician. Quite frankly, I never thought I would be qualified or even able to serve in this capacity. I've talked a lot about my background, so you know kind of where I'm coming from. As I dove into community advocacy work after my cancer experience, I probably spent about 10 years as just immersed in the community, doing health equity work, educational equity work. I started, obviously I had kids that really forced me to look into our educational system. I've shared with you my experience on the healthcare system. So as you can imagine, my kids are starting school, and now I'm skeptical about the educational system. My husband and I have been running a youth nonprofit, or a nonprofit that serves youth for the last decade. We actually started working in that nonprofit even before I had cancer. So we've been involved as coaches and mentors in our community for many years. But I essentially I took over as president of the youth organization in my community about 10 years ago. And, as Diane had mentioned earlier, I really immersed myself in the community issues. Just thinking back about how the community had helped me through my personal cancer journey, one thing I failed to mention was I had some deep conversations with God during that time. Yeah. And you can just imagine me, deep reflections on, I actually had a journal. I have a cancer journal that I still keep to this day. It's 10 years old. And I reflect on it every now and then. When I didn't know whether I would live another year or not, I made short-term goals and long-term goals. And I remember making also a list of things that, if I live, these are the things that I want to do. And if I don't live, this is what I want my legacy to be. And so I have a little booklet that I refer back to, and these were during like my darkest moments. And when I reflect back at that book, at that journal, everything in that book is about how I wanted to help my community, how I wanted to give back, how things I wanted to accomplish for my community before I left this world. And I remember coming out of cancer and starting my business and becoming a mom and getting involved in the community, and just the last 10 years leading up to this journey as a school board trustee. I just remember like wanting to lift my community up. And so that's what I've been doing. I spent a lot of the last 10 years immersed in schools, volunteering in schools, working with youth, working with families, working around health equities and educational equities. It was about 3 years ago. The local high school in Diamond Hill where I moved back and, where Diane and I grew up, they don't have a PTA. And when I got involved about 5 years ago, they didn't have a booster club. Essentially, you got kids participating in athletics and different clubs and events here who don't have any support. I mean, they have the support of their teachers and their coaches, but it's very limited in what
You're talking about financial support, right?
Financial support, yes. They don't have the luxuries that some of the other school districts, suburban districts may have. It's a Title I school, low income school. Everyone there's getting free reduced lunch. That might be their only meal of the day. And I got involved as I rejuvenated a defunct booster club about 5 years ago. And I got involved with those kids, and some of them, they grew on me. I watched them graduate. About 3 years ago, a group of them wanted to organize a march to the polls. There is a voting location right there on site on school. And so they went out, they reached out to the principal and some of their counselors, and they got the full support of the administration. And they organized a march to the poll, which was just a march outside the school building and right around the corner to a poll to go vote. And about 40 of them, about 40 seniors who were eligible to vote, walked to the voting location and voted for the first time. They asked me to come with them. And I just kind of stood back and followed them and watched them. And I went in to vote with them. And when we came out of the voting poll, one of the students, who is now a TCU student, he asked me why my name wasn't on the ballot. And he said, why don't we have people like you who we know, who are in our communities, who are doing the work? He said, you're here in the schools every day. You know what we need. Why are you not on the ballot? Why are people like you not representing us? And he basically asked, where's our representation? And I took that to heart, and also as a call to action. And I knew that at that point, like, God used him to get that message to me to say, you've done this work in the community for 10 years. It's time for you to make a greater impact. And I'll be honest that 3 years ago, I didn't feel anywhere near ready to run for an elected role. I didn't feel qualified. I said, there's a lot of things that I need to do before I get myself ready to run. I enrolled in a Leadership ISD academy and a fellowship. I learned all I could about educational inequities, about data, school, looking at the data, diving into the data. I learned about what exactly a school board trustee. I mean, I can be honest, I don't think I really knew what a school board trustee did at that moment 3 years ago. I learned more about what their role was. I looked at case studies. I looked at the representation that we currently have in our city and in our school boards, and it did not reflect the makeup of our students. Fort Worth ISD is, 80%, over 80% students of color, over 90% economically disadvantaged students. The board makeup did not represent that. And so I just felt a calling that I've been doing this work. I know the issues. I know the students. I know the family. I know my own lived experience, and I have value that I can add, in these policies that are being made for students like myself. And so I spent 3 years preparing myself to run. And I can tell you, even when I threw my name in the hat last November, I still was unsure of myself. And it was really my community who pushed me and inspired me and motivated me and told me, we need you. We need your representation. We need you to represent us. And that's pretty much how I ended up here today.
Absolutely. Well, one thing I know about elections is all these elections, they're truly, it's a team effort, right? It's a team effort to win those things. So the moment you won, how did you find out? Where were you when you found out you won?
Well, I'll go back and start with the fact that as soon as I put my name in the hat and on the ballot as a candidate, I immediately got a call and was told that I could not win, and that this was not my race to win, and that I should just consider withdrawing from the race. Initially I had two opponents.
Welcome to politics.
Yes, I had two white male opponents, and so they said, this is a hard race. You probably won't have the money, the backing, the support, the resources to go up against them. It's probably best that you consider another race or another time. And it's not your time. And I said, well, I put my name on that list and it is my time. And I might not have the money and the resources, but I'll tell you one thing, I will not be outworked. And so I got to work. And the community was behind me. It was completely grassroots. Those kids who asked me to run and represent them were the ones that helped me run my campaign. My campaign was run grassroots. It was run by youth. It was started by youth. It was led by youth, and it was won by youth. They got out the vote. They got out there and canvassed. And I'll never forget. So the night of the election. I was in the South Side and I was with family, and I remember someone calling me and telling me, you won this thing. And I was like, I'm like, no, it's not over till it's over. So I'm gonna wait till every last vote comes in. And this was in the May election. I see the numbers rolling in, 49%. I needed 50 plus to win. And again, there's two other candidates. But I stayed roughly around 49% the entire night, and I saw the final numbers. And I remember just, 49.6%. And I was thinking, man, I just need that little bit more. So ultimately, the first election, the general election, ended in a runoff, or I would go into a runoff because I didn't get that 50%. I boiled it down to less than 30 votes I would have needed to win outright. I went back to my team. First of all, my team was celebrating like that whole night, just the fact that I got 49%. My campaign manager, my digital manager, like these youth, and I'm telling you, like youth who really led my campaign, they were celebrating. I was not celebrating because I was like, I didn't win. And they were like, but do you know, like just the fact that you made it 49%, you were so close to outright win, like that's huge. Like considering our budget, considering our resources, considering our limitations, we just have to come back 4 more weeks and push hard and finish this race. And so I'll never forget that night, everyone celebrating, and I could not celebrate. I said, I got to get back to work. And that night that everybody was out celebrating the initial results, I went back to my high school, to Diamond Hill Drivers High School. And I sat on the steps of the high school that night and like was just reflecting on everything up to that moment. And, just really said, like, we got to finish this thing. Like, we got to finish it. Those last 4 weeks, those last 4 weeks in the runoff were definitely the most challenging because at that point, your resources have dried up. You're tired. It's just very exhausting.
Yeah.
And
the runoff system is designed to oppress, right? The runoff system, that entire system is designed to maintain a certain power structure, right? A white power structure that disenfranchises minority candidates and minority voters. And you had to push through because you mentioned it, right? You're tired. You've been running an election for so many months. You're out of money. You're out of steam. And now you got to get people back to the polls. Continue to tell us about the home stretch of this election.
Yeah, so I sat there that night, and I'm glad you touched on that because I said throughout this entire campaign, like this process was not built for us. It was not built for someone like me, a person of color with limited resources. it was hard. It was a hard thing to do. But again, with the motivation being my community in the back of my head, just like any other time I've shared, I was pushing through. And I just won't forget that first night of the general election, where I sat on the steps of my high school and was like, you gotta find the energy. Like, you gotta finish this. Like, we're gonna finish this thing. And the next morning we got up and was like, okay, here we are. We're ready for round 2. And, I was incredibly outspent. I think about that, all the time, but we hit it hard. Like, we continued with our grassroots. And, one of the things that I continuously heard in the community, was there were folks who, said, your track record speaks for itself. Like, we've seen the work that you've been doing. I had the youth there out telling them the story, my stories and our stories. And we pushed through, we pushed really hard. We went another 4 weeks, into June. So there we are now at the runoff election. And again, I'm gathered with my team and my family. And, we were before the results came in, I was just reflecting on everything and why I decided to run. So that night I wore a shirt that said "Representation Matters," and I said, it doesn't matter what the outcome is tonight. I know that I gave it my all. I did all I could. I worked my butt off, and we're hoping for the best results. And everywhere that night, the results rolled in, and I had 55%. So
shut that down.
Well, one of the things is like the odds makers cannot bet against you, Roxanne. I mean, you've beat the odds over and over and over again in your life. And this is just another example because as we look at it, even with today, as diverse as things are, 90% of our elected officials right now are white male. Right. So even right now, you're breaking barriers, you're beating the odds, and you're someone. I mean, you're my hero right now. And so I just want to give you your flowers and let you know that that I'm a huge fan of yours. I definitely I want to continue to support your movement, your work, and I'm just really astounded by what I've been able to hear as I've gotten to know you.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I mean, my campaign was completely about the students, about the youth, and it was we pulled through with the backing of my community, and that's the way I want to keep it. I told my supporters that night that I won, like, hold me accountable, continue on this journey with me, stay engaged, like. It's more than just the election. It's more than just a campaign. We're in some very challenging times right now, and there's a lot of important decisions being made that are going to affect our children, our families for many years to come. And I need to continue to support. We as the elected officials that are representing our communities, we need that continuous support to push through the policies that are going to improve the academic outcomes and educational experiences for our students. And so I challenge all of my supporters to stay engaged. Like, don't just make this a one-time thing where you were involved in the campaign and you went out to vote. That's just the beginning. That's just the start. And I'm going to go back to that one student who challenged me to put my name on the ballot. I challenged him. He was a senior. He's now at TCU. That same day he challenged me, I challenged him. When you graduate from TCU, come back, give back to your community, and one day I hope to see your name on the ballot.
Okay. Roxanne, I hope that you know that the Now What podcast is a proud supporter of you. I personally am, always there, down for you anytime you need me. You've absolutely gained some new supporters in this episode. I want you to know that everything that you're doing to drive positive change for future generations is absolutely going to be part of your legacy. We can't wait to have you back to talk more about how we can all help improve the lives of our people through entrepreneurship. That's an entire new segment. And if you're listening to the show right now and have not subscribed to our website, stop what you're doing and head over to nowwhatradio.com and join the movement. It'll take a few seconds and would mean a lot for us for you to get that done. Follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find all of our handles in today's show notes. If you like what you heard today, continue in on the conversation at www.nowwhatradio.com and support independent shows just like ours. Don't forget to stay up to date on the latest episodes on our website and to be about this energy and share this podcast with a friend. Until next time, stay inspired.